Beautiful job. Good morning.
Good morning.
Woo, it is beautiful today. You know, the longer I'm here, the more I love Bakersfield. It's a really sweet little town, isn't it? My friend Myrna came to visit me recently, and she fell in love with it. She said, I don't get what people mean when they make fun of Bakersfield. She said, it's wonderful here. I said, I know, I think it is too, and ever evolving. We're talking about how to use our mind this month, treating ourselves to up-level our experience. And this week we're talking about freedom, my favorite word. Freedom is essential to the spirit. It is what spirit is. It's a freely expressing energy and intelligence. And we're very fortunate in this country. We have been, at least my whole lifetime, free. And free to make choices and free to live where we want and worship the way we want and move about. And it's a wonderful privilege. But in spirituality, there's also a freedom that we can cultivate, and it has to do with how we think. Freedom means different things to different people. But we all know we want it, we cherish it, and we have a right to it. But how we interact with it is key. Recently, I saw this great movie called Free Solo. Anybody else see it? Well, it was produced by the National Geographic Company, and it was a real documentary movie about a young man named Alex Honnold, who is a mountain climber, but he's very unique. I think he's like 26 years old, if that old. He climbs without gear. No ropes, no little hammers, no help, just him and his little soft shoes and his hands. I've never seen anything quite like it. It's extremely dangerous. He finds little crevices, like little cracks in the rock, and he holds on, and he puts his leg way out. He must have a core that won't quit, and hits his little toe in it, and he pulls himself up inch by inch by inch. Now, the movie was about how he did this, the only person who's ever done it, at El Capitan in Yosemite, which is considered the most dangerous climb in the world for that kind of thing, because it's absolutely straight up, and it's sheer rock. And there's just a few little places where you can grab hold and make your way up. And he did it. To tell you the truth, while I was watching that movie, I couldn't breathe. It was because he was actually doing it. They filmed while he was doing it. One tiny miscalculation and he would fall to his death. But he said, I never feel as free as I do when I'm climbing. To me, it is freedom. And I think that's a really interesting observation about the freedom of stepping out of our safety net, the freedom of taking a risk, the freedom of doing something unexpected. And in our personal lives, those opportunities do come up occasionally, and often we shy away from them. Some of us could think of other ways to feel free than climbing mountains without gear. But I've also heard something similar from surfers. My former son-in-law, who I still consider my son-in-law, is a surfer, has been all his life since he was a teenager. He's now almost 60, and he surfs almost every day after work. He said, you're alone in the natural world, interacting with it. But it could almost be anything that requires us to simply be present with nature and life and move in a new direction. And it could be a new job, a new relationship, a new way of being in relationship, a new way of seeing ourselves. But there's something that has to shift in us as we interact with this invisible power called spirit that gives us more freedom, new ways of doing things. Surfers often describe their relationship to the ocean as spiritual. And in fact, some of them will say it's a meditative experience. But they always use the word freedom. Every time I talk to a surfer, they say it's freedom. Imagine standing on a little board and letting the ocean move you forward. So today I want to look at how free we actually are spiritually, because we're always interacting with a natural law. We're always interacting with an invisible force. But what do we bring with us when we interact with it? How much are we locked up in our old concepts, our old fears, our old ideas? Maybe we're being terrorized by our own mind, held captive by projections and expectations and former rejections that we haven't let go of. Have you ever had a real nightmare that just scared the bejesus out of you and you woke up in the middle of the night sweating? And then in the morning you realized, that came out of my subconscious mind. No one gave me those images, right? We generated them. It just gives you a clue sometimes to what's in there, what we dream about. It can be a frightening realization, but one in our teaching we address. So the first step to living with real freedom is to address the mind. When I wrote this last night, I had this immediate picture of Julia Child. Remember Chef Julia Child? And she was in her kitchen with this large naked bird, and she's holding a cleaver, and she says, "Now we will address the goose." And I thought, that's how we have to be. Now we will address the mind, and we will pay attention to it, give it some care, and adapt it to some new ideas. That's really what we're doing. So freedom could be said to be the absence of fear. You know, there's an old book called Love is Letting Go of Fear. That when fear is dissipated, what arises is love. And we're not talking about romantic love, but we're talking about spiritual love, the sense of being one with that invisible power, one with something that is responsive to us. Yesterday, I was very honored to be able to speak for a couple minutes at the Peace Concert, which, by the way, Portia was the producer of, Terry was the musical director, Paula was the director. It was fabulous. It was really well done. Beautiful kids, great music. It was really quite wonderful. But I shared a story about His Holiness the Dalai Lama when we first met him in India in 1999. One of our invitees said about him, when you're in front of him, it's like walking into an empty room. And what she meant was he didn't bring anything with him. He doesn't bring any past ideas. He doesn't bring any projections. He is just there and present. It's a little off-putting because you're not used to people being that present with you. You know, you can tell when people are thinking about what they're going to say when you shut up. And, and we all do it, right? So he brings nothing with him. And that's our goal, in a sense. It's not an empty mind as much as it is a present mind. Present to what's happening right now. So a mind that is enslaved by negativity is never fully present in any relationship. You know, we're never free to give our true self into it. We are always waiting to declare our negative ideas so we can feel safe. And do you know that's the role of negativity? That's the reason we have it. It makes us feel safe because we're so sure we're right about certain things. And it's a little cell we live in. A little prison. There was this, I may have mentioned this before, I don't remember. A man named Bo Lozoff, he wrote a book called We're All Doing Time. And he goes into prisons and teaches prisoners to consider themselves monks in a cell. And he teaches them to meditate and to empty their mind. And they are having amazing results with these guys. Lives, they're transforming. Simply by shifting how we see what is happening now. Not being locked up, but being willing to be present and simply go within. It's an amazing thing. It's just that much of a shift, right? Someone once said to me, you know, it's just like looking from there to change your mind. Just boom, boom. It's not a big, horrendous, hard thing to do. We have techniques to do it. Jean-Paul Sartre said, man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, we are responsible for everything we do. We must give meaning to life. I find it interesting he used the word condemned. You're condemned to be free, whether you like it or not, right? Some psychologists have said freedom is our biggest fear. It's like people that are afraid of open spaces. It's like, who am I with all of this energy and all of this potential? You know, I'd rather be in my little idea of who I am. So here's some related advice from German philosopher Rainer Maria Rilke. And this was written to letters to a young poet. I think this has real meaning for us. He said, I beg you to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers, which could not be given to you now because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday, far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. Does that have meaning for any of us? It does for me. It's this teaching's not about working on ourselves. It's about noticing and adjusting. It's about boom, boom. So we know that maybe we have some unresolved things in our heart. And we ask the question, how can I heal this? And his advice is just live now, let it be. And every day as we move out into life, behaving in a way as if we didn't have unresolved issues in our heart, they'll go away. That's how you heal things, is by doing the opposite, right? Yeah. So personal freedom has to do with being okay with imperfection. None of us are perfect humanly. We're perfect spiritually. But as human beings, we're not perfect, and we shouldn't try to be. There are underground, let's say subterranean changes going on in us all the time. If we're in a teaching like this and we're studying it and we're contemplating it and we're meditating, we're doing spiritual mind treatment, and we believe it, then we have initiated a series of cause and effect on very deep levels. And we may not even, as Rilke said, even be aware that these changes are taking place, but we can count on it. What stops it is trying to be perfect. What stops it is trying to behave above our feelings, which we can do, and we need to make an attempt to do it, but not to discount the feelings. It's a tricky business. It's a both and all the time. So we want to realize we're not a project to be made whole. We are wholeness to be expressed. And we do it the best we can every day, right? So we're not an accident of nature or a random act of nature. We are an intentional human form of a spiritual idea. That's right. So these visions of ourselves are incredibly healing if repeated and energized by us, and we do it with the mind. We address the goose. So I can't help it. I just love her. I love that movie. They hate me, Paul. They really do. No. Anyway, spiritual mind treatment is a way of intentionally using our attention to draw from deep within the remembrance of our origins. And this is the cool part of this teaching. We are not putting something in there that isn't already there. We are evoking it, educing it, remembering it, drawing it out. And once we say, I want to remember who I am, say it out loud. I want to remember who I am. We have started the subterranean activity, and it begins to speak. It begins to nudge. It begins to prompt. Maybe we'll pick up the right book, or we'll take the right class, or we'll talk to the right person. Something will start happening, which it did with everybody here. That's why we're here. If we all told our story about how we got into this teaching, it would be very interesting. Very interesting, because it's almost serendipitous when you make your mind up. When you say out loud, as I did, I don't know where you went, God, but I want you back. I was led to this teaching, not to anything else, because nothing else would have worked for me, right? So, you know, I just wrote this the other day. I wish I'd brought it, but it didn't matter. People have always prayed. I mean, we're talking, let's go way back, before we had science and all. People have always prayed to something invisible, even when they didn't know what it was. But human beings have a core remembrance that the universe somehow is responsive, that the universe is like the ocean and we're the surfers, that it will move us forward if we interact with it in the right way. People have always had a sense that there's something that says yes to us. And of course, we got it all confused with who it was and where it was and all that sort of thing, and limited the power itself. But we've always had that sense. So if we go back to the surfer, he or she is engaged with a very powerful force. They have learned how to interact with it in such a way that it moves them forward, not in a straight line. Ever noticed that about life? Emerson had said a lot about that. It's like tacking in a boat. You don't just go straight. If you want to catch the wind, you move. Right? It's like surfers. Okay, let's put it this way. Life is not like, life is like, whoa! What next? Life is change and movement all the time. So surfers don't tame the wind. They manage their relationship with it. And that's our relationship to Spirit, God, the power, the responsive universe. We don't have to manage it. We manage our relationship with it. And that is all done within us in our perception. So it is with us in our source. And we say the universe is a responsiveness. Ernest Holmes, who founded this teaching, says, look at it this way. Love responds to love. Intelligence responds to intelligence. The idea of prosperity is responded to with an idea of prosperity. In other words, it's always in agreement with that which we state to be our truth. So our job is to really get to the truth of our own being and decide exactly what kind of a wave we want to ride in this life. We're riding this natural energy, which always pulls us to our center. Every time we do a meditation, I always kind of say, just let the mind go where it's pulled to. It's always pulled to the center. It's always pulled to silence. If we don't fight it, if we don't try to manage it, we just let it surf its way down, it will rest in its own potential. And that's what meditation is. It's our resting in our own potential. So we allow the mind to settle down and be still, and then we talk about the source as if we were introducing it to an audience. And this is the steps of treatment. For those of you who may be a little bit new to it, I urge you to take a class. But we introduce it by saying there's only one power. There's just one something being everything. It is natural. It is everywhere present, all the time, all of it, all at once. There is no place where it isn't. It is life itself in the formless state and the form state. It is birthless and deathless, and yet it takes birth and it transitions out of the form. It is constantly moving, constantly changing its expression, but in itself never changes. This is God. Absolutely. And we absolutely can count on it. It's within us. Yes. It's being us. Yes. And it's expressing by means of us. So we declare we're one with it. That's the second step of treatment. We can't be separate from it. How could we be separate from it? We are absolutely one with it. Like the ocean waves, it is forever moving in one direction, only one direction, from the innermost to the outermost. And we think about our own life. You think about yourself, how you relate to other people or life itself. It's from the inner to the outer, right? A feeling arises, you express it, an idea. You're interacting with people from the inner to the outer. That's the way the universe operates. It appears to be. And spirit is always moving from the inner to the outer, but it has to have an outlet. Guess who that is? That's us. We're the way in for spirit to have an experience. Okay, so our freedom is inherent in us. We're born free. And free we shall ever be, as long as we announce it, know it, and live it, and insist on it in our culture. Insist on it in our culture. And that's why, Deepak Chopra says every situation in life that we call a problem is a spiritual problem. And it can be solved by a spiritual truth. The truth is we are meant to live freely. And we are meant to express our wholeness in unique and wonderful ways. And we don't have to be perfect to do it, but we allow ourselves to speak above our experience as if it were already so, knowing that on deep levels that causes shifts and changes, and to be patient to be patient with ourselves, the way we would be with a child we love when they, when a little kid starts walking and then falls, we don't say, get up. It's like we just let them figure it out, right? And we need to be that soft with ourselves as well. Do you think you're worth it?
Yes.
I mean, really, seriously, I think self-worth is everything.
Absolutely.
And who would care about you more than you? Doesn't that make sense?
Yes.
That we are the caretakers of the Spirit that we're carrying around with us all the time. And it's really important that we love ourselves with all of our imperfections and our warts and all that, and just let ourselves be the presence of that as much as we possibly can. This is really what changes things. Keeps the body whole, healthy, keeps our mind relaxed and open so that we can receive inspiration and new ideas. So I guess the message today about freedom is give yourself a break. Address the goose. Be happy with who you are. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with any of us. There's something so right about us. It's just incredible. So let's take advantage of all the spiritual knowledge that's been handed down and use these simple tools to give ourselves that experience, that awareness. If you'll start, let's do a spiritual mind treatment. And we'll do it specifically today about our personal freedom as we recognize that the one life that is being all life is our life now. And that Spirit is present in this room. There's an old song that says, in this very room, there's enough love for all the world. In this very room, there's enough joy and peace for all of humanity. In this very room, there is enough creative ideas to transform this world because we are in this room, and so is God. So we recognize this beautiful power, and we remember who we are. Remember the love that is instilled in us, that is a part of our spiritual DNA, that is not something we have to get from the world or another person, but is generated from within our own heart and soul as we allow ourselves to let it be. We know that we can never be separate from our greater good, our God. God is our good, good is our God. We can't be separated from it because it exists in the field of possibility. It exists in potential. It exists in the mind. It exists in the heart. All the good, everything we could ever want in the world must come through us as we interact with that natural law that says yes. You are my beloved, in whom I am well pleased. And so today we become emissaries of this teaching and emissaries of the Spirit. And we take it out into the world and we speak of it and we demonstrate it and we are examples of it. We give ourselves the gift of being authentic and real, the lovable beings that we are. And so knowing this truth, we also know that this place is a blessing to all who enter it. That we are here not just to lock ourselves up in a little room, but to change the world. We are here to transform human consciousness. We are here to make peace on earth a reality. We are here to fulfill the promise of the ages. Heaven is right here on earth. And so with great, great gratitude for Ernest Holmes and all the great teachers and His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who's alive today on the planet, and all who are gathered today in the name of this truth, we are grateful. We are grateful to be a part of this great movement. We let ourselves step out, climb every mountain, knowing that Spirit has our back all the time. So in joy and peace and cheerful expectation, we let this morning come to completion. We let it be, beginning right now. We simply say, it is done, and so it is.